My name is Elias Moreau, and I've never been fond of family gatherings, especially the ones where everyone pretends we're a tight-knit clan. That night, in a dimly lit chateau in the French countryside, we gathered to celebrate my father's 65th birthday. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light, a string quartet played in the corner, and the table was set with crisp linens and polished silver. My brother, Julian, held court as always, his tailor suit and easy grin commanding the room. He'd always been the golden child, charismatic, successful, the one who stayed close to home. I sat at the far end of the table, next to an empty chair that seemed to mock my presence. Julian raised his wine glass and, with a smirk, said loudly, "Well, look who made it." I was starting to think Elias only existed in encrypted emails from who knows where. The table erupted in laughter, even from distant cousins who barely knew me. I smiled thinly, not because I was hurt, but because I knew something they didn't. Before the night was over, someone would walk through those heavy oak doors, and the way they addressed me would shift the air in the room. Let Julian have his moment. I'd learned long ago that when someone's about to trip over their own ego, you don't warn them, you let them fall. Growing up, Julian always got the bigger slice of everything. At my 10th birthday, Man cut a chocolate torte, giving Julian the piece with the extra ganache and the sugar rose. Mine was a plain wedge, no flourish. I remember staring at our plates, understanding even then how things worked. Julian was the one with the football trophies, the lead in the school play, the grades that earned him a framed spot on the parlor wall. I was the quiet one, sketching submarines in my notebooks, reading about Jacques Cousteau while Julian practiced his charm in front of the mirror. He went to university in Paris, studied finance, and landed a job at a bank by 23. By 25, he was married to a woman who organized charity galas and posted photos of their vineyard picnics with captions like "Blessed beyond measure." I, meanwhile, joined the French Navy at 18, trained as a submariner, and earned my officer's commission before I could legally buy a bottle of wine. My family never saw it as much. "You should consider something less extreme," Papa said when I got into the Naval Academy. "Submarines aren't exactly respectable." Man just sighed. Julian, ever the opportunist, would joke, "What, you live underwater now?" Like a fish. I'd come home rarely, usually for quick visits between deployments. Most of my time was spent in Toulon or on classified missions in the Atlantic, where the cold seeped into your bones and silence was louder than any storm. Once, I brought a photo of myself in front of a nuclear sub, shaking hands with an admiral. I gave it to Maman. She said, "That's lovely, Elias," and set it on a side table. By the next day, it was buried under a stack of Julian's wedding albums. No one asked about my work. I stopped offering details. The first time someone saluted me, I froze, certain they'd mistaken me for someone else. It was during officer training, after my promotion to lieutenant de Viso. The sailor's hand snapped to his brow, eyes steady. I returned the gesture, hiding the shock that someone saw me as worthy of that respect. By the time I made Capitaine de Corvette, I'd grown into the role, not for titles, but for responsibility. I led missions in the deep, where every decision could mean life or death. My crew knew I wasn't the type to shout orders from a distance. I was there at 3 a.m., checking sonar readings, ensuring every system was flawless before we dived. My current assignment was with a NATO Joint Task Force, training elite submariners for covert operations in contested waters. It was high-stakes, classified work, details I couldn't share, not even with my family. They never asked anyway. When my name appeared in a naval journal for leading a successful training exercise, I didn't send it home. After years of watching my achievements vanish under Julian's shadow, I stopped trying to make them see. When the invitation for Papa's birthday arrived, gold embossed, formal, requested my presence at a chateau near Lyon, I hesitated. But something felt different this time, like the click of a hatch sealing shut. I wasn't coming to prove anything. I was coming to end a chapter. A week before the dinner, I received an encrypted communique, urgent updates to our NATO protocols, to be delivered in person by Ensign de Viso Martin. I arranged for the delivery to meet me at the chateau. I didn't need fanfare, but I wouldn't mind if someone walked into that room and reminded my family I wasn't invisible. The chateau was opulent, with velvet drapes and waiters in starched uniforms. I arrived on time, dressed in a simple black suit, no uniform. Julian greeted me with a theatrical hug and quipped, "Elias, did you surface just for us?" More laughter. I took my seat at the table's edge, beside a cousin who asked what I did, then lost interest when I said naval operations. Julian dominated the conversation, regaling everyone with tales of his latest investment deal and his new summer house in Provence. When someone asked if I ever thought of moving back to Lyon, Julian cut in, "Why would he?" Elias prefers his secret underwater lair. Keeps him mysterious. The table chuckled. I sipped my water and waited. We were halfway through a decadent tart tatin when a waiter approached. "Monsieur Moreau, you have a visitor in the foyer. Delivery protocol." The table fell quiet. Julian raised an eyebrow. "What's this, Elias? Ordering take-out?" I stood, smoothing my jacket. "Just documents." In the foyer stood Ensign Martin, in full naval uniform, boots gleaming, posture rigid. He saw me, stepped forward, and, in a voice that carried back to the dining room, snapped a salute. "Capitaine de Corvette Moreau, sir. Delivery secured. Admiral Leclerc sends his regards." The room seemed to hold its breath. I heard a fork clatter against the plate. I returned the salute, precise and calm. "Thank you, Ensign. Stand down." He handed me a sealed folder, and I nodded my thanks. As I turned back, I caught Julian's wide-eyed stare, Maman's hand frozen on her glass, Papa's brow furrowed. I slid the folder into my bag, returned to my seat, and took a bite of the tart. "Sorry for the interruption," I said lightly. "Please, continue." The silence that followed was heavier than the chateau's stone walls. Julian tried to recover, laughing nervously. "What was that, Elias? Your secret agent moment?" No one joined in. A cousin leaned forward. "Are you really a capitaine, whatever he said?" I nodded. "Yes. I've been in the Navy for 14 years. The number landed like a depth charge. Maman adjusted her necklace, avoiding my eyes. Papa cleared his throat, but said nothing. Julian, for once, faltered. "I didn't know," he mumbled. "You never said." I met his gaze. "You never asked." The words were soft but sharp, cutting through years of dismissal. Maman spoke up, voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell us, Elias, about the promotions, the work?" I tilted my head, like when you sent a card for my officer commissioning. "Oh, wait, you didn't." Julian leaned forward, defensive. "You act like we've ignored you on purpose. You chose to vanish into your submarines." I kept my voice steady. "I didn't vanish. I just stopped begging to be seen." The table was silent now, no one daring to touch their dessert. I stood, brushing off my suit. "Thank you for the invitation, but I have a briefing at 0500. Enjoy the evening." As I walked out, Ensign Martin held the door, his posture still impeccable. I paused, turning back to the table. I serve with people who respect what I do without needing to know every detail. I used to hope that could happen here. I don't anymore. No one spoke. I left, the door closing softly behind me. Outside, the night air was crisp, the stars sharp above the Lyon countryside. Ensign Martin gave me a nod before driving off. No salute, just mutual respect. I got into my car and drove away, the chateau's lights fading in the rear view. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had the sea, the mission, the trust of my crew. Julian never reached out after that night. No calls, no texts, no social media posts about family unity. The silence was honest, and it was enough. Back at base, I stepped onto the dock before dawn, the saltwater breeze sharp against my face. My crew stood ready, their eyes on me, not out of obligation, but because I'd earned their trust. Some stories don't need to be understood by the family you left behind. They're meant for the ones who see who you become.